Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the third panel discussion of today at the School and Nursery Show here in Dubai. My name is Fiona Cottam and I'm the principal at Hartland International School. And over the course of yesterday and today, we've been answering the questions that parents have put to us, and those key and crucial questions that help them make decisions about choosing the right school for their child. The question that will face our panel today is transitioning between schools and schooling systems, whether within the Emirates or indeed moving from different countries. What are the challenges? What's the advice that we can give you? And how might we discuss that as a topic? I'm delighted to be joined by a wonderful, strong women's team today, which is lovely, which is great. First of all, I've got Pratibha, who is the principal at Emirates International School. Fiona from Carfax Education, who is a familiar face to all of us throughout the city and has worked here for so many years in terms of advising and guiding schools in terms of what we do. And also Sarah Brannon from Brighton College here in Dubai also. An interesting question, a challenging question for parents, and one obviously, particularly when they're moving country. That's probably the easiest one to start with, is it? Moving from country to country, moving from different curriculums, different organizational structures. What advice and guidance might you give? And Fiona, if I can start with you, just because Carfax Education is sort of, that overarching organization that does offer that type of guidance and advice to parents as they move from country to country. Would you mind?
Yeah, we work with families moving into the UAE, moving out of the UAE at all sorts of different transition points in education as well. And actually, one of the things I always find with families moving into the UAE is that they come full of trepidation, anxious about leaving their home education system, can't believe that they'll find anything as good as what they've got at home. And then you start showing them around schools out here and they are blown away by the quality of the education on offer here and by the choice and the variety on offer. So I think my key advice for any family that's transitioning in or out of the country is do your research. Really understand what's on offer, understand your children, and every child and every family is different, and then try and match your education ambitions for your children with the school. But it's do your research, I think, is the key, and that's obviously the bit we really help with.
Yeah, and in terms of then, what you do as an organisation, how do parents reach out to you, Fiona? Is it through?
So parents will get in touch with us if they're on the move. Quite often their HR teams will get in touch with us and we'll work closely with them, or families will find us sort of organically on word of mouth. And really they rely on us to be their eyes and ears on the ground, if you like. So for example, we've got families who are living here and they're thinking about moving back to their home country. We're very in touch with the schools, particularly sort of in England and Switzerland and places like that. So we can represent those schools, but actually really behind the scenes. If parents want to know what do they have for lunch, or what does the school corridor smell like? We visited those schools, we know those schools. I mean, like the schools here, with Brighton and Emirates International, we're here on the ground. We know the schools, we understand what goes on, we know the teams that work there. So we have a sort of in-depth understanding, but we're bespoke, we're impartial, we're literally working for the family. We're not trying to recruit them to a specific school. We're there to get the best kind of education for that particular child.
And that independent view, is quite important, particularly if parents aren't sure where to start. We've had the luxury of having principals and school leaders on the panels over the last day, but you're the first, perhaps, independent spokesperson, as it were. So it's a different insight, and I'm sure it'll one that will flavour the conversation as we move through. But from a school's perspective, Sarah, what are your thoughts? Guidance that you might give to parents, particularly British education system, but moving in from overseas, not used to the British system, or indeed coming from the UK? There's two different answers there, aren't there, really?
There are so many things to think about, and of course there's also so many choices, aren't there? And I guess what you do have to do, always it's the research first, find out, but I think it is about looking at, what are your perhaps long-term goals. No one has a crystal ball. We have to sort of think, right, where do I think I want to be in the future, and gear towards that the best that you can. So see about what are transferable skills. Ultimately, I think what you want is any child is, if they're in a good position academically, if they're confident, if they're feeling as though education, they've got the right mindset for it, well, actually, that's transferable more so than whether the curriculum is or not. So I think it's about, is your child actually happy in their school environment? Are they getting everything that they can? Are they making most of the opportunities that are around? Because you may not get those in that next setting. And then really, if that's all in place, then you're in a good stepping stone for the next steps. But then, of course, you get to the curriculums and things like that. So are there any sort of, is there any currency that you can actually say that that's transferable? You know, yes, the British curriculum has very clear expectations of where a child will be. You could get to IGCSEs, that's transferable, it's currency, people know that, understand it wherever they are in the world. So those are things that you can look at longer term. But I would say ultimately, is your child ready for that next step?
Yeah, true. Pratibha, you know, your views, a different school model again, people transitioning in particularly from overseas, which seems to, there's an awful lot of people moving into country at the moment, considering that the world is maybe in a bit of a flux and an economic downturn. It's wonderful to see that the economy in Dubai is certainly moving in the right direction, but any advice that you might give in terms of transitioning from country into Dubai?
I think that one of the first issues that a parent transitioning into Dubai from somewhere else in the world will have is the huge range of options that are available to parents over here in terms of different types of curriculum. So apart from the British, the American, and international baccalaureate curriculum, you've also got Indian, you've got Pakistan, you've got German, you've got Japanese, you've literally you've got Korean, and you've got it. And I think that can be extremely confusing for parents. And just like you've already said, it's important for parents to do their research before they come in. And my experience has been that not all parents actually do the research. But once they get here, they start hopping from one school to the other, and some of them are very, very confused. Some of them are knowing exactly what they want. And if they come, say, to an international school like ours, then they know that they want the IB curriculum. That's why they're there. But then even when it comes to that, it's no longer the case when Emirates International was the only IB school in Dubai for several years. Now there's, a plethora of schools around Dubai. And so for the parents, then the confusion increases. Okay, which IB school are we now going to choose? And I think it's very important, as was mentioned earlier, that the child has got to feel that they fit into the school that they join. And so it would be advisable for parents to visit more than one school, to walk around the school, absorb the ethos of the school. I would say unless it's a very young child, they should actually bring the child with them to see how the child responds to what they see. And I would also say, do come during working hours. There are sometimes parents who turn up after 4 o'clock expecting to see what's going on in the school, and all they see is the buildings and the furniture and the facilities. So those are the very practical advice that I would give parents.
Well, let's stay on that one, because of course we were just saying about the number of people who are coming in new into the city.
Yes.
They might not be in a position to visit the school because of that. Fiona, transitioning into the city, how could schools, particularly, how could we help people? What pieces of advice might you say to parents? Ask these questions, look for these things to make sure that transition process is smooth.
Absolutely. So, I mean, very much when we're working with families, we will take a lot of time to get to know them, to get to know their children, to understand what their kind of educational ambitions are, and also what's the best fit for the school. And on the back of that, those sorts of conversations, we will then recommend a short list of schools. And actually, families moving into the country, we always say, please don't identify where you want to live until you found your school, because actually you don't want to find the dream school and then find that you're living kind of 45 minutes in the other direction. So we do always say, look at schools first. And I think it's exactly as you've both been saying, it's about finding the right fit. I always think with children and schools, it's like putting a plant into the right soil. If you get it right, you just watch that plant grow and flourish. And if you don't get it quite right, it's okay, but it's just not as good as it could be. So we would always come up with a sort of short list of schools, and then absolutely, if possible, to get them to visit the schools, because I think there's nothing like wandering the corridors with the children, seeing what's on the walls, being able to talk to the staff, to really feel the pulse of the school, to understand the ethos. But obviously at the moment that's not particularly possible, although I gather things are beginning to open up a little bit more, which is great. But I think schools have been very innovative with their online open days. A lot of schools have really good sort of little sort of insight videos that you can do. Schools have been offering, meet and greets, so you can actually talk to staff and talk to teachers. All of those things are really valuable for international parents moving in, and actually that needs to stay, because even if we do get back to sort of travelling around again, it's so valuable for international parents to be able to do that from the comfort of their sort of sitting room at home, and also for children to be able to engage in that as well, because sometimes you can't take the children around the school with you, particularly if you're just flying in for a look-see, but for children to be able to get that insight as well, I think is really helpful. But we do then actually tend to give parents a sort of checklist of questions as well, because parents are quite daunted by schools. Quite often they won't have been into a school since they left a school. And of course, everybody thinks they know a lot about education because we've all been educated. But when it comes to making a decision for your child, it's huge. It's a really big thing to do. So absolutely, curriculum is one of the first things that we concentrate on. We talk about, teacher-pupil ratio numbers, that sort of thing. Older children want to know more about, parents want to know more about destination data. Where do the children go on to? How transferable is their kind of curriculum? What are the transferable skills they're picking up? So we would give parents sort of checklist of sort of 20 questions, if you like.
So speaking of checklists, what's really interesting, now down to the nitty gritty, Sarah. I'm moving here. I'm bringing a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, whatever it might be. What do I need as a parent in terms of making that transition? I'm making my choices for schools, yes, but do I need school reports? What type of evidence do I need? Do I need to pack up everything with me, and what do I bring?
I think that's one of the things that's quite easy now. I mean, there is a really clear system of, what it is you need and how that works. So we can even do things like assessments online now. We can have dialogue with the children now. And again, depending on age and stage, I mean, we are here at the sort of schools and nursery show, a lot of younger ones. Well, we're having videos come in of children doing activities, and they tend to like that. They actually are in their own comfort zone. Mummy is clearly working with them, and they're doing some numbers and some colours and things like that. And we don't actually need too much in terms of assessment of that child. We just, at that time with the child, we just want to be able to see that they're ready for school, and this is going to be, a good opportunity for them. And as they get older, then of course we have, we're very used to using things like as standardized tests. So Cat 4s and things like that, they can be done at home. And again, it's a little bit more easy, I think, for us to get the information that we need. Reports can be just sent. Everyone's very au fait with using all the technology these days. So there is a list of things we do want. We're looking at people perhaps at writing. We're looking at reports. We're looking at the standardized data. And that will help us to make a decision about, are you going to be a good fit for us? And are we going to be a good fit for you? Because that's what it is all about, making sure that that's there. And then we'll be able to work from there.
I keep checking. I'm not actually checking my emails, but we do have questions that are coming in from parents who are watching at home. So I'm just keeping an eye on the questions to make sure. Before we look at the questions from parents, just to check, Pratibha, are there any particular differences or any particular challenges for parents who are moving between Emirates here in the UAE? Anything you might mention?
I think that the challenges are less when they're moving within the UAE. And it's really just getting used to a different school, not the same at all as someone coming from abroad. And I think every school has the online admission system on their website that explains exactly what people have to do, what they have to bring with them. So really, it's become very, very easy for the parents. And I think most schools have sort of standardized the requirements, like the Cat 4 example. There's one example, reports is another, and maybe some sort of references. Then definitely schools want confidential information to be communicated by the previous school beforehand, before a decision is made whether or not to accept the child. And so I think that is something that is out there, so the parents actually know. They don't have to wait till they come here to find out what's required.
And that's one of the key questions that has come in from a parent. Where can I find that list? And the best place to go is the school
would be
website.
the online school application form. Yeah. And then you also have their contact numbers. Then you have also, I think most schools now have a virtual tour of the school that's also available for parents to have a watch. And I think some of the innovative ideas that schools have come up with now during the pandemic have worked out so well that I think we'd like to keep some of them going, even after everything becomes normal.
So there's a difference between, transitioning on a very practical level, for example, Sarah, moving from country to Dubai or moving from Emirates to here. But we know many of the parents that are here today are actually first-time parents. They're parents who are transitioning actually from home or from a nursery setting into a school setting. And as head of sort of pre-prep and prep, any particular pieces of advice you might give to those parents, how they can help support their child, and indeed how we then support the family as they take that leap of faith and transition their child from that home setting into school?
And it's such an important step, isn't it? And it is exciting. I think we all want to make sure it's a really positive experience for everybody. And so that's where schools will all be reaching out to families, making sure that the children are getting familiar with different things. It could be that they come in for their play dates. It could be that they're meeting the teachers virtually. Our parents will be reaching out as well. And that's what all schools will be doing. They'll have systems to be able to help that be as smooth as possible. And then when it actually comes to the time, it's about, again, just thinking ahead about what that's going to look like when you say goodbye. And the children pick up really a lot on you as a parent. So if you as a parent are saying, right, oh my goodness, it's the first day. Oh, she's going to be so nervous. I can't imagine. That's exactly how the child's going to be, because she's picked up on you. But if you're feeling confident, your choice is the right choice. If you're feeling that this is really how this is going to be just such an experience and so exciting for your child, that's what they're going to pick up with. And I think that actually is the best thing you can do as a parent. Just be really confident with your choice. You've done everything that you need to do. You've been in, you've done lots of transition things. Now just be excited for your child.
Yeah.
And then it will come across really brilliantly, because children surprise us all the time, and perhaps something that you think they'll never be able to. I think we've all learned that in this last year. We never thought that they would be able to get into school without their parents delivering them to the classroom door and staying for 15 minutes every single day. And hey presto, they can. They can surprise us.
I'm just wondering, Fiona, have you noticed any particular differences, particularly because of COVID, for example? Families moving, any additional challenges or anxieties perhaps that you haven't witnessed before in your experience?
Yes, I think there's a lot more anxiety around children starting schools or transitioning between schools, just because of the situation. I mean, I think we're all suffering from high levels of anxiety anyway, and I think, as a parent moving a child into a different school, that's exacerbated. I think also because they quite often haven't been able to sort of have that very personal getting to know the school sort of feel, because that hasn't been possible. Some children had to join school for the first time online, and that's been quite a traumatic start for some. But I think exactly as Sarah says, if the parents adopt a very positive attitude towards it, the children pick up on that very quickly, and it's putting a positive spin on and saying this is an exciting thing. Yes, it is a bit different, but it's going to be great. So I think those have been the challenges for parents this year. And then obviously now as things are opening up again, it's children being back in larger classes, infection rates, all of those sorts of things. There's still all of those underlying residual kind of worries, I think. But I think, by and large, people over here have dealt with the situation very well. And I think schools have been amazing. I think the KHDA, all the regulations have been very clear. So I think, when you look at other things that are happening around the world, I think here has dealt with that very well and has gone a long way to allay parental concerns or make them not as bad as they could have been.
It's interesting, Pratibha, I'm just wondering if you've experienced the same, but certainly I find it a challenge that there are children in my school, I've never seen their faces. And if I saw them without the mask, I'm not sure I'd actually recognize them. It's really, it's a dilemma, isn't it? And if I'm a 14-year-old moving from country, moving into a school here, despite the fact that I think the government and the KHDA and the DHA, we've done an incredible job, as have our schools, in terms of protocols and how we've managed the systems, I'll still have a 14-year-old joining a class, socially distanced, 1.5 meters away from all their friends, with a mask on all day long. Any guidance or advice that you might give to parents about how to manage some of those anxieties, particularly COVID-related, moving into school?
I think that is certainly very, very daunting for parents. And I think they have to get reassurance from the school. So I think it's really incumbent on the school to make parents feel really, really comfortable and ensure that there's extra support in place especially for students coming from overseas. But because, as you've said, Fiona, that in the UAE, I think we're very, very fortunate that schools have actually managed to remain open for the entire year. I don't think that's happened in very many other countries.
No.
And that should actually give the parents confidence, and explaining very, very clearly to parents exactly what the expectations are, and then schools making sure that there is support systems in place for dealing with anxieties that parents may have. And I think for a parent to have a contact person in school that they know that they can go to at any point in time when they have a question or when they have some anxiety. Usually it would be the class teacher, but it can also be a counselor or whatever, whoever the school deems suitable for that sort of role. And I think that will give parents more confidence. And parents also have to understand that they have to be a bit flexible, and parents have all kinds of expectations, and the schools have to manage those expectations. But overall, I think that in Dubai, listening to what people from other parts of the world are saying, I think things are better and more normal. Yes, I don't want to use that word, but yeah.
We talked yesterday, we were talking about sort of mental health and anxiety, and we did raise this topic. And I think the thing that we're probably all finding is that our young people are far more resilient than we are. And many of the anxieties that they have are actually manifestations of parents' anxieties. But it's a tough time, and it is a difficult time for everybody. We've got some great questions flying in. Sarah, I'm going to throw the first question to you, okay? It's a relatively easy question from a school's perspective, but you can understand the anxiety from a parent's perspective of where do I find the information? As a parent who is living outside of Dubai, trying to make a decision about schools, and there are so many schools and so many great schools. As an international parent, I can't visit the school. Can I have a video chat with the admin staff to answer my queries? Will you do a Zoom call with me? How will you interact with me when I'm overseas?
And that's one of the things that we can do so well now. Yeah, absolutely. We can be there at the end of a screen and just go through all of those things with you, just talk to you about what it is that we offer as a school. And I would advise every person who's coming in to do that with their school and make sure they're talking, not only to the admissions team, because they've got a remit that they're looking for, but get to the academic team. Get to the right people who are going to be actually leading the school. And so they've got the vision for what it's looking like. They actually know what's happening in the classrooms, and they are the best people to be able to talk to. And you'll be able to have really open conversations with them. And if you come away, which often you do, and you think, oh, I didn't answer that question, it's not such a hard thing to be able to get into a call again, go back again, or perhaps you've compared information with another school and it's raised a question. So they're more than happy, all schools I'm sure are more than happy to be able to get meetings together and be able to talk through any of the issues that parents have.
Yeah, I think it's interesting if I reflect back over my last sort of 12 years in Dubai, if I think back to running open days and in a previous capacity, 500 parents in the door, and you were sort of ticking them off and think that's wonderful, I have all these people through the door. Today, actually, the parent experience is actually far more personalised. It's far more bespoke, isn't it? And we're probably providing a much better service than these mass events that we used to have in the past. I don't know, Pratibha.
Yes, that's what we're doing as well. In fact, our school tours are on demand, and we don't have more than 2 parents going together for one school tour. If it's more than that, then we split up. And different members of the senior leadership team and middle leaders are all now designated to take parents from the school. So where in the past it would have been the admissions team doing the job, now because of the sheer volume of parents coming in, not in terms of numbers, but the number of tours that you have to do, because they're personalized and separate and socially distanced and all the usual protocols that we have to follow, I think parents are getting a much closer look at what's going on, having an opportunity to ask very, very specific questions than they would have had if they had come for an open day.
And actually, they should demand it, shouldn't they?
Where they just sit in a hall and watch the presentation being presented by someone, and then the ones who kind of raise their hand first or speak the loudest get to ask the questions, and the others are left wondering, oh no, I don't know what's going on. So I think in many ways, the deal is better for the parents now.
Yeah, totally.
And I think, again, as I said, these are ideas that we have come to us out of necessity, but some of these practices should continue into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we said, the bespoke service, I think we've become even better at it, haven't we?
Yes,
today.
absolutely. And parents are now going to demand, I think, the service.
We'll have to
Yes.
continue the 5-star treatment or the 7-star
Absolutely.
treatment.
With the principal or the head of school taking the parents around on a tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fiona, can I throw a second question, which unfortunately is going to see an enrolment leave a Dubai school as opposed to join a Dubai school. But my 9-year-old son was born in Dubai and has attended school here up till year 3, but we're now heading home to Australia. We're super worried about him fitting in after we make the move. How can his current school best prepare and support him before we go? And I suppose, what can parents expect of that new school in Australia, how they might help him reintegrate as they move?
So I think the key for me here is communication. It's about the two schools communicating so that the school on the ground here understands what the expectations are for the school in Australia, and the school in Australia understands the sort of experience that the child has had here. I think one of the things we often find with children moving out of Dubai, perhaps going back to their home country, is that the education system here is so international, and you move back to your home country and suddenly that's quite a significant change. So I think it's about preparing the child for that, and again, as you've all said, with all of this kind of we can do all the Zoom calls and things. Actually, allow the child to sort of zoom into the class that he's going to be joining, see what it looks like, see the faces there, so they're a little bit more familiar when they actually kind of land and arrive. But communication for me is absolutely the key here between the schools, between the parent and the schools, and trying to engage the child. I'm quite young, year 3, but letting the child see what it's going to look like, so it's not such a shock to the system when they get there. And the parent being positive again, I think that's such key advice. If the parents are feeling excited and positive about it, then the child will pick up on that.
There's often and I've heard it said, and I haven't experienced it personally, but I have heard it said, there's a little bit of anxiety about we're leaving Dubai where everything is very glitzy and it's wonderful and the schools are incredible, and I'm moving back to my very small town with my very small school. How is my child just going to adapt into something that, as you say, is far more maybe insular? What can parents do? What guidance can we give to parents, in terms of them helping their child as opposed to the schools helping the child? Sarah, anything?
What we have when we have children here in the school, we look at ways that they can get involved in so many different things. What opportunities are there? And loads. We're very, very lucky. They have loads of opportunities. But then when you're going to your new setting, I think you just have that same mindset. Okay, so it's a change, and we recognize it's a change. But what opportunities are there? What are the new things that we have a chance to do? How can we get involved in what is happening there? And we all, I think, understand the importance of culture, of customs, of traditions and things like that. And we've tried to make sure that we've given the children here that broad perspective. And now they just need to be able to really dig deep into the one that they're going back to, because perhaps that's going to be their roots ultimately. And so it's really important they just look for whatever it is, and how do we get as much as we can out of that new setting.
So the only thing that's really missing for us is, the coffee table and the cups of coffee, because it's felt like such an interactive chat, and I'm still trying to look at this and think, gosh, half an hour has gone already. Final thoughts that you might just, your final word of wisdom that you might offer to our audience who are listening at home today about transitioning from school to school or from country to country. Just a final quick thought that you might offer. Pratibha?
To parents who are transitioning, I would say that do your homework, do the research, make a list of questions that you want to ask, and make sure that you ask the questions, because I think very often parents remember what they want to say after they've gone back home. And reach out, if you can, to other people within the community into which your child is going, not necessarily just people from the school, but if there's a possibility socially to also interact, so that you can get some feel for the kind of community that your child is coming into, not just in the case of the school ethos, but also that of the city that you're going to, especially if you're leaving, say, Dubai and going to, as you say, somewhere which is completely different. And the same advice I would give for someone who's coming in here,
to make the same
so
inquiries.
that they know what to expect. I think you have to set your expectations based on the reality. And that would be my practical advice to parents.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Fiona?
And so, yeah, back to research. Do your research. Be familiar with what's available. Make confident choices. Communication would be my other thing. Communicate with your child, with the school they're leaving, with the school they're joining, and be excited for your child. Change isn't a bad thing. Change can be very exciting, and new path, new journey. So I think be excited for your child and embrace the opportunity.
True. Sarah, final words?
Building on top of that, but I think education's in a really good place at the moment. I think we're lucky. There's some amazing schools, there's amazing chances. It's in a good place, it's innovative, there's lots happening. So in that case, let's make the most of it. There's plenty out there and you'll be able to enjoy it.
So Pratibha, Vow, Sarah Brannon and Fiona Mackenzie, I think, what we've certainly shared with parents this afternoon, isn't it, that really there's nothing to worry about. The schools are going to help you. Your children are resilient. They're going to be fine. It's going to be wonderful. And let's stay positive together, even in these COVID times. But help is at hand. Help is on hand from schools, from organisations and companies such as Carfax, from other parents who live in the city, from other online resources that everybody can find that information. But above all else, don't do it alone. Make sure that you do reach out to schools. We're delighted to have been here this afternoon on behalf of the School and Nursery Show. We'd like to thank obviously all of our ladies this afternoon for joining us and for their insights and for sharing their experiences and their views and opinions. We're still full swing downstairs with lots of visitors over the last 24 hours certainly, and these videos will be available online for you to look at your leisure over the weeks ahead. So on behalf of the School and Nursery Show, thank you very much to our speakers this afternoon and thank you for joining us.